Good afternoon to you. Mark Sutter with HurricaneTrack.com. Here it is Friday, the 27th of May, 2022, and you have tuned into the Hurricane Outlook and discussion. We are going to talk about today a potential hurricane for Mexico that looks pretty likely. And then what? That is definitely the big question as we got the ensembles here trying to indicate the fried egg look. It does. It looks like a fried egg, and we'll explain this and more, or I will explain it, and you'll listen and hopefully understand better as we progress through Memorial Day weekend, a big weekend, a lot of people traveling, sort of the unofficial start of summer. And look, we've got a system that we have to focus on here in the southeastern Pacific. It is Invest Area 91E, that E for Eastern Pacific. And this is going to go on to become a hurricane more than likely and impact this area through here coastal wise. In other words, the immediate impacts will be right along the coast. But then somewhere across this area, more impacts, heavy rain as this dies down across the fairly rugged terrain of southeastern Mexico, and that could some of that energy cross over and maybe develop in the Bay of Campeche, southern Gulf region after that. So that's the and then what part of today's graphic, today's title card and thumbnail. So here is the satellite animation this afternoon. First of all, before we look at 91E down here, look at the strong upper level winds. Again, this is why hurricanes don't just come out of nowhere. Once the waters get warm, there are a lot of other factors involved. Strong upper level winds, and you can even see strong upper level winds here just by looking at the clouds getting pulled apart like cotton candy. But down here in the southeastern Pacific, there's a area where the upper level winds are lighter. And so these deep thunderstorms can grow in the vertical a lot more, and they release that heat through the condensation process, and the whole engine is getting started. And we're going to have a depression here, a tropical depression, the first stage of how we track these systems fairly soon. And when we do so, we'll be able to track it on our interactive maps over on the HurricaneTrack Insider site, and I'll be able to really show you some details about where it is heading. Meanwhile, in the lower 48, we have a cold core low sitting up here, and then the trailing cold front and severe weather in the warm sector. Got some rumbles of thunder and some pretty good heavy rain here at the HurricaneTrack offices in Wilmington, North Carolina. More energy coming into the Pacific Northwest. This is going to be a pattern that's going to set the stage for some nasty severe weather through this area as we get to the latter part of the weekend and into next week. We will address that in just a moment. So the vorticity signature of 91E right here looking more and more stout. I told you it would. That's what we look for. Do we see anything like that over in the Atlantic? No, we don't. Nothing in the deep tropics, the Southwest Atlantic, or the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean Sea, nice and clear. Most of the energy is still way up here in the higher latitudes of North America, as we would expect in May. Eventually, though, these pieces of energy that come off Africa, these tropical waves, they'll start to look like this, or we get systems that cross over. And that's, by the way, going to be a very fascinating part of keeping track of this system, is watching the vorticity, the low-level heart, really, that's the way I look at it, of this system as it treks across southern Mexico. How intact does it remain? We'll be able to watch that using this wonderful product from the University of Wisconsin, the vorticity signature. But nothing brewing in the Atlantic for now. But we'll watch this as it comes across. Could be interesting where it ends up and how the models are handling it. Well, we're going to get into that right now. So here's the GFS from today's morning run, the 12Z run, 850 millibars of the atmosphere. This is pretty much my go-to, just in case you didn't know that. If it looks good, as in healthy, when we say good, we mean healthy, structurally, looking at this from a meteorological perspective. I like to look at the lower 5,000 feet or so, the 850 millibar level, because if the structure there, that's the bones of it, the heart of it, whatever you want to call it, if that is intact and healthy, then everything else above it, can be. That's the building blocks, if you will, the foundation for this to go on to develop. So this is what we have in the analysis from this morning, or at least 6 hours out from it. 12 hours later, 24 hours, so this is tomorrow morning, Saturday morning. Should be a depression by that time. And then 48 hours, you see it really starts to ramp up. Tropical storm Agatha, certainly by that time, I would assume. and it mills around down there over fairly warm water, strengthens quickly, and then makes landfall somewhere, potentially on the western side, at least the GFS thinking so, within the next 80 to 90 hours on the west side of the Gulf of Tehuantepec. And again, once this gets to be a depression or more, and I should say and more, we will look at it on our interactive map. I know there's a lot of different maps out there. There's Google tracking maps and plenty of websites that have some pretty good interactive maps. I really like ours. I can zoom in and show you the different street levels down there. I may not know how to pronounce all of these Mexican place names, but it'll be important because we can at least talk about impacts starting as early as tomorrow. So on one hand, I'm looking forward to this becoming a trackable entity from the Hurricane Center so we can zoom in on where those impacts are going to be. I heard from a couple of people on social media that have relatives and colleagues in southern Mexico, and they appreciated me bringing this to their attention. So, we'll talk about it. Absolutely. People live down there. It's going to cause some issues. So, moving out into time, that was day 4. Here's day 5. And a couple things, if we just kind of stop here for a moment. Some energy tries to get its act together, if I can highlight it where we can see it, in the vicinity of the northwest Bahamas, potentially. And then you've got this large circulation area associated with what would be Agatha, and then more of this overall gyre down here. Just a huge, very complicated mess throughout this area. A lot of heat and energy. These tropical systems, they release that heat, again, that condensation process through convection. And there's a lot going on down there, and the models are going to try to figure out mathematically and physically, is anything going to take over and become consolidated and thus become a concern, again, for more land areas. So you folks in the vicinity of the Bahamas, this is only 5 days out. So by midweek next week, there could be some storminess. So anybody on a cruise ship, in and out of Fort Lauderdale, Orlando, or Port Canaveral, or Miami, you're in the cruise area, in the industry, and you're in the vicinity, the area of the Bahamas, you're vacationing, whatever the case may be, even looking at this on the GFS, that would raise a ruckus. That's going to be showers, thunderstorms, gusty winds, and not ideal conditions for cruising, as an example. And it could send waves to the beach, and you can get rip currents. And, these systems don't have to be big-time news-making, headline-grabbing hurricanes to cause problems, all right? So we got to watch all of this from here on out. Everything is suspect out there, especially this year with how favorable things are going to be. So this is day 6, and whatever that tries to do, it gets closer to Florida, maybe. Kind of loosely organized. And then speaking of loose, look at that. That is all spread out. The GFS operational here, kind of stringing the energy out. And this is basically a week out. We'll stop there. And that's what's happening with it. So that's the what's next. I don't know. And you can see as we just kind of move this all through, it does try to do all kinds of funky stuff if you go far enough out into time. That's math and physics and the modeling running amok. Now here's another way to look at it, the ensemble spread. So that was the operational. Now we can look at a whole group of members of the ensembles, the GFS ensembles, and the different color codes that Dr. Cowan has, Levi Cowan, who authored this site, Tropical Tidbits. The color code shows you how things spread out over time. It's a good way to understand uncertainty. So in the near term, there's our system, 91E, and everything is generally clustered around a very small area because we're basically 6 hours out from initialization. As we go out into time, you know what's going to happen. You start to see a spread, and that's what the colors represent. And then you have the different, you can't see them real well on the video, and they're tiny little numbers, but those are the pressure centers of the various ensemble members that detect the low. So as we go out into time, 96 hours, landfall down there, and then just going through time, look at all that yellow. Just a huge spread at a week out, all over this area. And then the individual members, 1,002 millibars, maybe 995 in there, 1,001. There's a lot of different members that depict, there's a little deeper one, looks like about 988 or something like that. This shows you the uncertainty. There's not a tight clustering like this right here, way out in time over here somewhere. We don't have that. And I don't think you ever will when you go that far out in time. That's kind of the point. the models are not that good yet. This shows you the spread of possibilities, and the farther out in time you get, it just gets more and more crazy there. All right, the ECMWF off the Tropical Tidbits site, also helpful. This goes out to 10 days. Let me refresh this. There we go. It did it automatically. We'll look at this out to about a week. This is the initialization today. There's our system right there. Just comparing the different models here, two of the major global models. We could spend all day if we wanted to look at everything, but we don't want to do that, so we try to breeze through. This is tomorrow, and then Sunday, and then this looks like 12Z Monday. Again, a pretty formidable but small in aerial coverage, more than likely a hurricane, landfalling in Mexico. Then the Euro, though, says, hey, maybe I'm going to develop something and keep it down in the Bay of Campeche, and then maybe something more. So the Euro does paint an interesting picture here as this comes in and maybe mills around, might give us something to watch. But that is 8 days out. 8 days. And the model spread is going to be tremendous. So the point is, Mexico, you're going to have hurricane conditions somewhere. I'm very confident of that. We'll hone in on that more starting tomorrow. And then as it makes landfall and crosses that landmass down there, the thinner portion, close to the, we call it an isthmus, where the land is narrow between two bodies of water, the Gulf of Tehuantepec on the south, and then the Bay of Campeche on the north. Pretty narrow pinch of land there. If it makes it across that relatively intact, it could be interesting down there. Why? Well, I showed you part of it. The other is water temperatures are above average a little bit in the vicinity of where it is and where it could end up. They're also a little bit warmer than average, nothing alarmingly so. That's pretty alarming, way above normal. This is all below normal. Just a real quick look at temperature anomalies. We'll do this more on Monday. And then the Atlantic Basin out in the eastern part, it's loaded for bear. That's why all of these seasonal forecasts are very, very high. But we've already talked about that. We know what's coming. Now we start to look out for the trouble that has been predicted. And there's going to be some trouble. There really will be. People are going to be impacted. I mean, look, water temperatures down in the southwest Gulf, Bay of Campeche are 28, 29 Celsius. We're talking 82, 83 Fahrenheit. Plenty of warm water for this to work with. If it were to come out of here and mill around and maybe head towards, and I'm just speculating, if it were to head towards the Florida Straits, for example, more than a week out, yes, all of the water temperatures around here are certainly warm enough, and it's going to come down to upper level winds. Fortunately, this time of year, the upper level winds are generally out of the southwest, and they are usually too strong to allow anything too intense to develop wind and surge wise. You can still get a big rainmaker, and we have to treat rain from these tropical systems with the same respect that we treat 150 mile per hour wind. If you're going to get 14 inches of rain, or some cases it might only be 3 or 4 inches of rain, like if a system goes into the desert southwest of the U.S. from the eastern Pacific, rain does matter. And we'll talk about that when we need to, but just a little reminder. Meantime, if you're heading to the beach for Memorial Day weekend, I know a lot of people are going to come down I-40 here into Wilmington. It's good for the economy, but it just gets crowded here. Wrightsville Beach and vicinity, just depending on where you go. Water temperatures basically mid to upper 70s. A nice weekend in store. Kind of stormy today, and we can see that reflected in the SPC as we transition to that. Stormy across the east. In fact, we do have some tornado watches in effect through here. It's dynamic. By the time I get done with this video, some of this could change. So, go to weather.gov, weather.gov, and check it out, or the SPC site, spc.noaa.gov. But nevertheless, this is the outlook for today. Overall, the tornado threat, again, I say it's not zero, but that 5% right up the I-95 corridor or just east of it, those are some pretty big cities in there, and a lot of people are going to be traveling one way or the other through that. So you need to take that very seriously and be careful if you're driving out there, all right? That's today. What about tomorrow? Luckily, all of our East Coast areas and the Gulf for our beach-going friends and families, you're good. Just random summertime thunderstorm pattern setting up. Then we start to focus up on the Midwest, because focus in on the Midwest, what I should have said, because the energy, the dynamics, it's all going to be there for that to be pretty active. especially as we get out towards Sunday. I think we're going to see a moderate in here. A big outbreak of severe weather is coming with the potential for some serious supercells, big hail, you name it. And then even the day 4 has a 30% down into Kansas, parts of Nebraska, the 15% already outlined, as you can see there. Different people that I follow, Kalen Patel, John Castle, and others on Twitter, really highlighting, I'm sure Eric Webb's going to chime in at some point, this is starting to look pretty nasty for Sunday, Monday, and then maybe a couple of days in the next week as we ring the bell to start the hurricane season. So on this note, and I'm going to discuss it more tomorrow, just a little bit of a let you know what I'm doing. Sunday, I'm flying out to Dallas over here, somewhere in that vicinity, and then on up to Denver, somewhere there. And then Monday, my colleague Marcel Ligabo from Brazil, he's up in the U.S. studying hurricanes, has done so the last few years, one of our colleagues, one of our supporters, a scientist, it's another geographer like me. We're going to go into that area and set up equipment like we do for hurricanes to test some things for hurricane season, but also just trying some stuff out in Tornado Alley where we might be able to serve a purpose. There's going to be a lot of people out there. It's Memorial Day, Monday. That's when this is valid. So we got to look out for all that traffic. But this is raising some eyebrows for sure, and we're going to head out of Denver and get into this somewhere, set some equipment up ahead of the action, and record all kinds of things on video, as well as our data sensors from Kestrel that we're using. So I'll talk more about that over the weekend, or at least tomorrow, because I got to fly on Sunday. Appreciate a couple of extra people here buying the map. It's a work of art. It really is. It's at our store here, our poster-sized tracking map. Give me 10 seconds to pitch this to you. I drew this myself way back in 1999. I used to do these. It's going to be a little bit more than 10 seconds. I used to print these by the hundreds of thousands for TV stations, big box retailers, you name it, and they were poster-sized. They're giant. I don't have any in here at the moment, but they are 18 inches by 24 inches, full color, good, durable, kind of glossy paper. This one sophomore, I think it is, in high school in Houston, I think his name's Jack, if I'm not mistaken, just purchased one recently in the Houston area. And he's like, man, I don't want to mess it up. It's going to be so beautiful. It's got that beautiful shine. But it's a tracking map. It's a work of art. Again, I literally drew it myself in Adobe Illustrator way back when I started my career. You have NFTs. I don't do NFTs. This is, own a little piece of artwork, and it's the 2022 version. And yeah, you got to mark it up. You get one of these, you get a Sharpie, works well on these, and you could literally, this is what I told Jack, you'll be plotting history, potentially. You think about Ida last year in the historic 2020 season. So anyway, head over to the HurricaneTrack store if you want to get one. We still have a few dozen left for purchase, and they're also part of Patreon at our $25 level. If you want to become a patron, you can get it included with your patronage, your support there over on Patreon if you want to do that. Just a little reminder. All right, let's get rid of that, and I want to show you this, leave you with some really cool news for you. Part 2, not 4, that's 4. Part 2 of the Hurricane Laura saga. The Hurricane Highway is going to be made public in just a little while. I'll make that public today. I know a lot of you have been asking about it. I had to break it up into 2 parts because it's just so epic. Look at that background, the thumbnail for it, the drone shot from our colleague Brent. So later today, part 2 will be made public. It is supported through Patreon. That's why it has that at the very beginning here. Sorry, I've been watching it myself. That's why it says this at the beginning from the title screen. Crowdfunded by Patreon. And that is a real proud thing that I'm able to do. You guys support it on Patreon. And we even put the names of those people in the credits back here when all is said and done, just to show you. The Houston unit. Hey, there's Marcel's name. Anyway, this will be, you got to see what that's all about. Wait a minute, Laura didn't hit Houston, but it was close. That was a real close shave, and we talk about that. We go into the science and some of the, the background on some of this stuff to tell a story of our journey down the Hurricane Highway back in 2020. Trying to catch up on these. Sally is next in the queue, by the way. Episode 7 will be Hurricane Sally, and I'm working on it. It's a laborious process. It really is, but I love doing it. And it leaves a legacy to tell the story of what we do with your support out there in the world of the internet. Crowdfunding, what an amazing thing. That's how we do what we do. It really is. So, hey, look, please be safe out there. Speaking of crowds, without you, alive and well, there's no need for me to do this. I do this for you guys. I do it because I love it, and it's great to have you. So seriously, be safe if you travel. If you're headed to the beach, take it easy because I want you back. We're going to have a heck of a hurricane season. We're going to cover it, to the best of our ability, which is pretty legendary, I think you might say, if you have followed us for any length of time. You know what we're capable of, and we're going to do it even better this year. All right, so we got to have you back, so be safe out there. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack. I'll talk to you again tomorrow afternoon.